Welcome to the Brilliantly Resilient podcast. What's your train wreck? Everyone has one. The question is, are you just visiting or are you going to live there? I'm Mary Fran Bontempo. Join me and let's learn how to come through those train wrecks, not broken, but brilliant. Hey everybody, welcome back to another episode of the Brilliantly Resilient podcast. I'm here with, as I told her, my new best friend today, Ann H. Putnam. Ann is I'm going to read this from her latest book, which we're going to be talking about today. She's a writer and an editor with an unending interest in the stories that shape our humanity. She's also the author, in addition to Make, Do, and Mend, of Navel Gazing, One Woman's Quest for a Size Normal, as well as numerous personal essays and other short work. Anne's on the other side of the country from me, living in Northwest Washington with her husband and kids. And yes, she says it rains a good amount, but not as much as you think, and she loves it. Anne, thanks so much for joining me today.
Thank you so much for having me.
I have to tell you, as I said, when we first connected just a few minutes ago, I feel like I know you so well because of this book. And let me say, and I said this to you, it was by turns just like heartbreaking, reaffirming, um, authentic. There was so much life packed into this, which is what a good memoir should be. So I want to thank you for that, first of all, and for really hitting so many touchstones with not only your experience, but your vulnerability in going forward and talking about things like the therapy that you went through and all of those kinds of things that, a lot of people don't really want to talk about. So, why memoirs? I guess that's what I want to say to you because you're a wonderful writer, but this is vulnerable stuff.
Thank you. First of all, thank you so much. It's so wonderful to hear that the book is working for other people because I always tell people I go into sort of a fugue state when I'm writing. And when I'm revising, that helps me actually read it from a distance, which is great. But of course, I like what I'm writing because, of course, as I said to my husband earlier, I was talking about listening to myself on another podcast. And I said, I was so surprised. I said things that were so they resonated with me. And then I was like, of course they did, because you said them and you are you. So of course I enjoy the work because it's the kind of thing I would want to read, which is why I write it. But it's always so good to hear that it's not, sort of clanging discordantly for other people.
Yeah.
Uh, but so why memoir? The answer that I gave with my first memoir was I don't know how to write anything else. And so far, I'm feeling like that's less true. I'm working on a novel, and I do feel like it's not feeling as impossible as it did. And there is a freedom there in being able to take experiences that I would like to be able to talk about that feel like somehow they don't fit the narrative of reality the way that I want them to, and then being able to be like, well, I'll make the reality fit that narrative, right? But generally, I love talking about myself and about other people and about the things that a lot of people would find to be secret. There's very little that's taboo for me. There's a little bit. If you My first book has a whole chapter called I Don't Do That, and it's about poop. And I don't like, I hate talking about that stuff. The only reason I talk about it at all now is because I have kids and I don't want them to be anxious about talking about things that are very real things that happen in everyone's body. Still hate it. But other than that, like I love talking about all the things. And I'm always telling people there's no such thing as TMI with me. And so in some ways I'm a born memoirist in that
Yeah.
sense. And I also grew up with a father who loves to take his most embarrassing stories and turn them into dinner party fodder. He is sort of more of a performer than I am, but he loves to tell everyone else's embarrassing stories too. I feel bad about that. So I tend to go, if anything, a little too myopic, focused on myself. But yeah, I find it the easiest thing. And it's also I'm frequently thinking about these things all the time. I'm running through them in my head. What does it all mean? And why does it have to mean something? And then sometimes when I would talk to friends about my therapy sessions, they would say, "Oh my God, I feel like I'm getting therapy through your therapy." And I was like, "Well, that's great. Not everyone can access this. So, ask away. And like, if it's relevant to what I'm dealing with in therapy, I'm happy to share anything that I know. So it's what I do. Whether it's, there's no real why to it. It's just who I am. Like who I am in the book is genuinely who I am. A lot of the time, memoir, and I always tell my memoir students this when I teach classes, it's not going to be all of you. It's going to be a persona. It's going to be a shaped perception of you. And that I'm sure that's true. There are, of course, it's not gonna fit all of me in the book, but like when I reread these pieces, I'm like, that's me. I mean,
Yeah.
there's no persona really. It's just sort of me on the page. So
Well, I think if we all had the experience of writing about our lives as you did and as you do, we see it in some ways as a persona. We know it's us. We recognize that it's us, but it's also not all of us. It certainly is parts of us, but it's almost impossible to put down every single thought in your head at any given time, at any given, because pew pew pew, you're all over the place. So you have to be somewhat selective in what you put on the page. That being said, I think most of us have a lot of these personas in ourselves. Like every part of you can relate to some part of someone else because we're all human. And I think that goes back to one of the things that I picked up about you. You said you write about relationships, body image, and everything else that feels like the intersection of the everyday and the deeply personal. And when you were filling out your form for me, you said, my mission in doing this is to make people feel less alone in their experience of humanity.
hmm
And that concept that anything that you write in this page, somehow someone's going to be able to relate to this.
Yeah, I mean well, my hope is that, I always said, especially with my first book, I'm not trying to appeal to everyone, right?
Right.
I'm trying to reach the people that need these books because both of these books are books that I wrote because I needed them. There was
Mm-hmm.
nothing when I wrote my first book. There were no books that dealt with large amounts of weight loss and sort of that not being a success story in the way that our society frames it, and also not being like a cautionary tale that like, you
Right.
had surgery and then your life was never the same and then you died or whatever. Like we love to binary that stuff, right?
Yeah.
And I needed something more nuanced. And it's the same with this, the heartbreak stuff. Everything I would read was either, oh, well, screw that guy. I kicked him out and I'm so much better off. Or it was like, yeah, my life was never the same and everything is ruined. And why bother with anything? And it's like, no, there's got to be, I know there's middle because I know people who've been through heartbreaks. And I also felt like, why is this going on for so long? I'm sure readers will feel that way too at points. I tried really hard to make them feel it without feeling it so much that they have to stop reading. But like, it felt like it just went on forever. I was like, when does this stop? When do I stop being constantly tormented by this? And I couldn't find anything that really addressed that for me.
Mm-hmm.
Not even, online, not even on Reddit, not even on blog posts. And so when I write these things, it's always with the motivation to find whoever's out there, desperately needing this sort of reflection of their experience.
Mm-hmm.
I'm not saying I offer wisdom or like can tell anybody how to get out of it, but I can at least be like, you are not the only person that feels this way. I have felt this way. And if I can put words to it in a way that makes you, because I've had other people say to me, you put words to things that I was experiencing, but I didn't know how to describe them. And then you put these words to them, and I feel, oh, now I understand it. And I was like,
Thanks.
a friend of mine said that to me, and I was like, that's the best thing that anyone has ever said to me because that's what I'm doing for myself is I'm constant putting words and words and words and choosing the ones that feel like they hit the nail. And so, that is my goal is to just help people feel less alone because so many of us are just out there every day carrying around stuff that hurts and we don't tell anyone because it feels awkward, right? So,
Mm-hmm. It's awkward, but it's also universal. And I mean, the specifics of your experience, and this is a breakup memoir. This happened to you when you were 28,
20,
28?
yeah.
Okay, so you were 28 years old, and I think all of us, anyone who has been blessed enough to have love in their life, has also had heartbreak at some point. But to me, the bigger thing that came from all of this was not even as much, certainly the specifics of the situation, but just the idea of what you just said. There's hurt out there, and we don't have to sit with it by ourselves every single day and feel like we're alone. We're isolated in this place because when you're in it, it feels like that.
Yeah, you feel like a burden to anyone that
Yes,
you're like, oh, I've mentioned my heartbreak to this person 4 or 5 times, so it's probably too many. So I got to talk about something else. But you're living with it every day for years. I mean, I remember saying to friends, I feel like such a broken record all the time. And the people who, really came through for me, one of the things that they did was say, it's fine. Like that's what
yeah,
you're, it's okay to be a broken record about that. Like this is
yeah.
what's,
This is what's going on in your head. And I
yeah.
think too many of us kind of try to repress that because it's not acceptable beyond a certain amount of time. At least that's how we perceive it. And the consequence of that is you push it down, you stuff it down, you don't really deal with it or come to terms with it. And then you start adding things to it like why, what did I do? Why is it, what about me? Why did I do this? Is this destined to happen over and over and over again? I mean, if you don't get it out, and I'm a big believer in therapy, first of all, anxiety and depression girl here too. Like, I mean, Lexapro, the whole 9 yards, like everything.
Yeah.
So I'm right there with you on all this. But I learned a long time ago that sitting in that space and trying to talk myself out of it was
Mhm.
not going to work. There was no way. So the fact that you can look at these things and say, A, you're not alone, and B, don't sit there forever by yourself and do nothing about it.
Right. And that's, I keep, as you're talking, I'm hearing my first therapist's voice in my head. And there were multiple things that she said that were related to those things. So, for example, when you said, well, don't make it worse by adding all these things, right? I remember saying to her at one point, I was talking about my body and I was like, oh, I've been trying so hard to get past this idea of my body being not okay, not good enough, blah, blah, blah. And so, not only am I feeling like I'm too fat, but I feel bad for feeling like I'm too fat. I feel like and she was like, oh, good. So you just add another layer. So you just add a layer of shame onto your shame. And I was like, yes, apparently,
I'm
yes.
really good at that, by the way. That's one of
Yes.
my specialties, you're saying, right?
Oh yeah, I was like, "Are you kidding me? This is a Russian honey cake. We're like layers after layers." And there was something else too when you said, don't sit in it alone forever. I remember saying to her like, I get so frustrated with the idea of time heals all wounds. That phrase used to make me crazy because I would be like, well, first of all, how much time are we talking? Right? Because if we're talking 10 years, I don't want to live for 10 years with this. And
Yes.
I dealt with like very real suicidal thoughts because I was in so much pain. And if someone had said to me, it'll be 10 years, I probably would have tapped out. Like,
Yeah.
meanwhile, if someone had said it'll be 6 months, I would have said, okay, I can tolerate almost anything for 6 months. And I might not have had suicidal thoughts anymore. Right. But no one can tell you. And I
Right.
remember explaining to my therapist about this, this platitude, time heals all wounds. And she said, it's not so much that time heals all wounds as that, what you do with your time matters. Like time may eventually heal this wound with no work, but she was like, you're here every week doing the work. And I was like, oh, that is a comforting thought that if there is a time period at which, I would be healed with doing nothing, I'm hopefully accelerating that
Moving
by
them along. Yeah.
taking this scab every week, right? So,
So
yeah, she was
but it's so funny you say that because a few years ago, and it may have been like 6, 7, whatever. My first boyfriend, my first like real love, and we'd been just because of our social circles and people we knew, all that had been kind of in touch just on Facebook and whatnot. And he said, "Hey, I'm going to be up near my parents. Do you want to meet for lunch?" And I was like, "Oh my God, oh my God." And I mean, she's a grandmother by that point, literally a grandma. This was when I was like 16 years old. So, but it was great. I mean, we had a great time. It was really fun, but he broke my heart. And I literally said that to him. I was like, you broke my heart when I was 16, still carrying that around. So this idea that it just goes away, when something hits you that viscerally and that much in your soul, not only can you not expect it to go away, but I don't want to say you almost shouldn't want to because you don't want to feel the pain, but you have to be aware enough and self-aware enough to recognize and pull apart what this experience meant to your growth as a human.
Yeah, I mean, who would you be if you hadn't been through that heartbreak, or if your heartbreak, your first heartbreak had happened 5 years later, or, I mean, I used to yell at my ex. I would say, you convinced me over 7 years. You convinced me that it was possible to experience love without heartbreak, right? Because I'd never been in love before. And I said for the first 5 years of our relationship, nobody marries their first love and hasn't worked out. It's just not, this isn't a real thing. Like we're not Christians. We're not doing this in this way that's like part of a societal expectation of us. So therefore, we will surely break up and find other people and be in love a second time, and that'll be the one that takes. And it took him 5 years to convince me that I didn't need to always have one foot out the door. And then bam, he cheats
Yeah.
on me, breaks my heart.
You
And
let
I
your
was
you let your guard down, girl.
you bastard. Yeah. And I still am sort of salty about that element of it
Yes.
that, that he worked so hard to convince me, to lull me into this sense of security. But yeah, I mean, who would I have been if I had had,
Yeah.
how hard would this particular heartbreak have hit me if I had had my heart broken at 16 first, right?
Right.
Or
Right.
what if he and I had gotten married and we had kids and it happened when I was 35,
Yeah.
right? But maybe on home turf in the US, or, just who knows? You think about like the sliding doors element of like the
Yes.
ways that we are shaped by these big things that happen in our lives and who
Yeah.
we become. And it's wild.
It
It's
is.
wild.
And I mean, I always make it a point to say this. I am never one to say, oh, look at the silver lining. Because you know
I
what?
hate
When
that one
stuff
too.
sucks, it sucks.
Yes,
Like,
I
don't give
hate
me
that
that.
one.
Yeah, I mean, my son is in recovery from heroin addiction. He's doing really, really, he's going to have like 15 years clean in the summer. But
Wow.
I never look at my life and go, oh, it's good that that happened. No, it
No,
wasn't. It was terrible.
exactly.
But it happened. So you have a choice. You either sit there with it and let it fester, and I say this a lot too. You either decide to live in that space or you decide you're just visiting that space. And what can you learn from it that moves you forward? So I kind of want to ask you because I got a sense from the book that a lot of your feeling about yourself and your validation of yourself as a person came through that relationship. It was so, is that something that you can kind of pass on if you talk about wisdom to people? Make sure, yes, you find your partner and you complement each other and all that, but you don't validate your existence through anyone.
Yeah, I would say, and I knew that, right? Like
Yeah.
I was always a memoir reader. I have always loved, I loved the show Girls. I've always loved these very introspective pieces of media, and conversations with friends. I knew that you shouldn't define yourself by how your partner sees you. But it is also intoxicating to have a
Yeah.
partner who you walk out in your granny panties from the bathroom and he's like all over you, right? Or, someone who just, I mean, he put me on a pedestal in a way that every now and again, my husband will say something and I'll be like, my ex used, and then I'm like, don't do it, don't say it. But I think I'll be like, you could dote a little, you could dote a little.
Just a little bit. Just give me a little of that. Doesn't have to
And
be the
he
whole package.
does.
Just a little. Yeah.
Yeah, I mean the thing is he does, the way he loves me is so much more real, which
Hmm.
also means that he'll be like, well, that was a dumb thing to do, but like I'm gonna support you through getting fixing it or whatever, right?
Yeah.
Instead of being like, no, 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 anybody could do it's so
And
not dumb.
you're just so wonderful. And
Yeah,
yeah,
you're
I know I'm not. Like I know I'm
right.
not all the time. So let's not throw any of that stuff, that at me because you don't need that in a relationship. You need understanding, you need forgiveness, you need someone to adore you in
Yes.
a good relationship, but not in an unhealthy way. And I think like you said, you might know that logically, but boy, it feels good.
Feels so good. But you know what it is like, first of all, it can be a really big red flag because abusers will frequently do something called love bombing. And I'm not saying
Yes, yes.
that's not what was happening with us. I mean, we spent 7 years together, and for the last year of it, he sucked. But like, what he was doing was in some ways almost as bad because what he was doing was he just lacked the self-awareness and the sort of confidence in who he was to be able to be honest
Mm,
with
hmm.
about my flaws and his own, right? So instead, it was like we had this relationship that I took very seriously and felt was 100%, through and through my whole body, my whole heart, my whole brain. And he thought that was what was happening, but my assessment of it now, looking back, is like he was very young and he was, the ways in which he was romantic, for example, were very textbook, right?
Mm.
The only reason he didn't get me a dozen red roses is because I had told him that I prefer tulips, right? He was very textbook, big romantic gestures, blah, blah, blah. Meanwhile, my husband is not a big romantic gestures guy, but we went to Japan together 3 months into our relationship, and he pulled a bottle of wine and a little electric battery operated candle and bread and cheese out of his bag that he had hidden from me. And we had a picnic on the plane. And
Oh
I
my
was,
gosh.
what? Even tulips. He brought tulips on the plane. They were a little crushed from his bag. But like that man can do a romantic gesture.
Yeah.
But it's just so different from the sort of like, oh, the big rock that gets proposed. I get proposed to in Paris with a giant rock in the rain, and he's wearing
Yeah.
an outfit, right? So, yeah, I would say in terms of advice, I would just say just be wary, and not necessarily because someone is bad or trying to harm you, but they may not be as self-aware, as mature as they need to be for you to trust them, really. Like if
Yeah.
if he showed up, if my ex showed up on my doorstep with all kinds of crazy, you know, affirmations of love and giant gestures, I would be like, you're still this guy?
Yeah.
Like, part of me that was like, oh, I want that. It would be like, ooh, yikes.
Yeah, this is not real. I mean, I think at the end of the day, you have to look at whomever you're with and say, is this real? At its most basic, is this going to withstand, when the washer breaks and when the kids are screaming and when everything is not moonlight and roses and Tiffany boxes?
Right. And it's like, and that's the other thing is the performative elements within a relationship are one thing, but I think about it all the time with kids because I watch my husband parent our kids. And I think about how my ex would, I don't think I shouldn't say all the time. If my husband ever listens to this, he'll be like, you think about him all the time. But um, every now and again, I think about, I wonder what he would have been like as a father. And like, would he have been capable of handling the kid not liking him if he had to set a boundary? I don't know.
Hmm.
And I think he would have wanted to be the sort of on paper perfect dad who's like
Yeah.
funny and, and plays with them and makes them laugh and understands them and comforts them when they're sad and never ever says no, right? And guess who gets to say no all the
The
time then?
bad guy, mommy. Yeah,
Yeah.
mommy becomes the bad guy. I'm
Yeah.
looking at all of these things here and this everything just kind of comes back around. You're talking of what we're talking about right now is reality. And one of the things that you also say is that our stories matter, the everyday ones as well as or perhaps more than the extraordinary ones. And it's interesting to me because you look at the news or whatever at night and it's the headlines that are blaring at you all the time. But when you look at your life, it's not the headlines, it's the moments, it's those things that happen. And yes, the great things, like you said, the grand gestures, all that is lovely and it's fun and they can be a highlight and all that. But how much more important, like my husband will go out and we've been together a very long time, but he'll go out for something or another and he'll come in the house with either a Dairy Queen sundae for me, yes, please,
Good man.
or a hot cup of coffee that I can drink even the next morning. And I'm like, you don't ever have to take me out for a fancy dinner
That's
if you
right.
can do this kind of stuff because it is those little things when someone can look at you with genuine understanding of what your life is really like and not try to create something that fits into a script.
Yeah, exactly. And so, and it's funny, I think part of why I said that about the everyday stories mattering is I feel like I'm always trying to convince myself because that's the kind of thing that I write. I've never, I'm not someone. I remember when I wrote my first book, someone that I was talking to, an acquaintance of mine said, but, you know, who would want to read your story? And I was like, ow. But
Yeah. Yikes.
I had been asking myself that forever. And the thing is, I wrote that book as part of my master's degree. I don't think I would have ever had the gumption to think that someone would have wanted to care about my story. And the only reason that I even got an agent is because my school sent out an anthology of all of our work to agencies, and I was contacted by a couple of agents. If I had had to actually like put myself out there, I might not have done it because I didn't necessarily think that my story mattered. And as I've gotten older and found that those kinds of stories from other people matter so much to me, I mean, you can read something like a fantastic, anything by John Krakauer, right? Like any kind of Into Thin Air or Into the Wild. These stories of extraordinary experiences, they are fascinating, but they don't have an impact on me as a person the way
Hmm.
the quiet stories do. Um, and unfortunately, the sort of business of publishing, the business of media tends to gravitate toward those bigger stories, the headline stories, and not so much the quiet stories. And so I think that's part of why I'm always telling people that is that I'm also always telling myself that the story
Hmm.
matter. The fact that it's not an extraordinary experience is rather than being a drawback, I think it's a benefit because it means more people will feel connected to it, right? I mean,
That,
how
that
many
that was
Everest?
It's exactly what I was just going to say to you. I mean, those big grand stories, they happen to those, you know, 2.3 percent of people who write them. But the rest of us are sitting here going, well, on the couch going, I hope he brings me a Dairy Queen tonight, like that kind of thing. That's the story, that's it. But that in and of itself, that small act is almost a culmination of a relationship in and of itself. If you can see past the grandiose things and boil relationships, boil love, boil communication, boil humanity to its most basic, it is those little relationships, and even the little relationships that you have with perfect strangers on the street every day. When you're both at a crossroads and you wave the other guy on and they give you a nice wave, like even that little bit of contact is what real life is about.
Mhm. Yeah.
So those things, to be able to share them in a book and to make that book um, relative to so many people, again, not through necessarily the exact experience, but just that idea of anyone's experience matters. Your experience, whatever it may be, is important in this human journey that you're taking.
Yeah. And I mean, it's not just important to you or the people who
Hmm.
know you. It's important on a humanity level, right? There are people all over the world at any given time experiencing, if not the same thing, something that mirrors what you're experiencing, right?
Exactly.
Like I have a friend that I talk to. We're both moms, and her daughter is the birthday twin of my daughter, but a year older. And so she's just outside. She's just finished her breastfeeding journey, and I'm in the middle of one with my second kid. And sometimes we text in the middle of the night because she'll be up with her daughter. And she said, I just love that we can talk to each other in the middle of the night like this because it's
Hmm.
only in the middle of the night. And she said there's an app apparently where you basically go on and it shows you a light, it shows you a map, and there's a light everywhere that someone else is on the app at this time. And it's like for breastfeeding moms because you do those night feeds. It's so isolating, and there are moments where it's lovely. It's just you and the baby, and then there are moments where your husband is snoring next to you and you're just like, all right, enjoy your sleep. But like, I'm over here for 45 minutes keeping our
Hmm.
child. Um,
Yeah, exactly. No
and
small thing that I'm doing over here.
Yeah, but I think about that map with all the lights, and I think that applies to everything. I mean, we could, I'm not saying we need an app for everything because I'm a little
No.
disillusioned with tech lately, but, just reminding ourselves that at any given moment, no matter how much we think that some experience we're having is completely it's unique, right? It's we are the only one who has ever been this humiliated or this miserable or this heartbroken or felt this stupid about something we said or whatever. Everyone, there's thousands, millions, probably billions of people experiencing the exact same emotional experience, just with a different circumstance.
Yes, it's that awareness that regardless of circumstances, at the end of the day, we all share this common humanity, which is expressed by our emotions and our reactions and our, if I dare say the word soul, I mean, whatever you can consider like what a soul is, it's the thing that connects us. And if we are willing to recognize that, how much better off would we all be because of the compassion that we could convey to other people and the empathy and the, hey, I don't know exactly what you're going through right now, but I can see it's something. Let me help you.
Right. Yeah, or even just sit with you, even
Yes.
if I can't understand it, when people go through things that are just unbearable. And with social media, I feel like, we've never been more aware of other people's suffering and therefore
Hmm.
more sensitized to it because we see it all the
Yeah.
time.
Yes.
I am not someone who can really be desensitized. My husband had to ban me from Instagram for a while, because of, a lot of really horrible things coming out of, in particular, Gaza, but everywhere, right? And just the suffering of babies and children. I can't take it.
No.
But, we should be so connected by this intense awareness of other people's experience. But like, there are things that I can never know what it feels like to be a mother who had six children and now has none and has watched each one suffer and die, right? Like, I can never, hopefully never know what that feels like. But that doesn't mean that I can't hurt for that person and, sit with that person and say, I don't know what you're going through. I can imagine that it is unbearable because it's unbearable just to know about it.
To hear about it. Right.
And like, I see you. And if there's something you want to say to me, I'm here to listen. If you want to sit here in silence, I'm here to do that. If you want me to bring you a Dairy Queen sundae, I will do that. When other people are grieving or going through something, even if it's not something that you yourself have experienced, like, we should be capable of at least extending our imagination to what might that feel like. And, at the very least saying, I'm here with you and I see you and I see your pain and I'm sorry for it. Right.
It's a great opportunity to connect. And I think one of the things that we tend to do as humans, and sometimes it is kind of about self-preservation for exactly the reason that you just said. It would be easy to slide into hopelessness sometimes with all of the horrors that
Hmm.
are going on in the world. But I think part of that comes from a feeling of helplessness. I can't do anything about this. Like, what can I do? And you just in a very lovely way gave an answer. Now, you may never meet someone who's had those experiences that you just talked about, but you know somebody who's having a hard time right now. We all do. And I'm just a firm believer of the sort of the power of connection and passing it down the road so that it builds. So anytime that we can extend ourselves in any way to someone who's hurting without inserting yourself in the person's life. I think about Anne Lamott often, who says, "Stop getting your messy help all over everybody." Like, so it's not a matter of solving the problems. It's a matter of sharing that experience and saying, I'm so sorry, and I know I can't fix this for you, but I'm here just as another human."
Right.
And I think that those things are it's a lot of what I learned from this book. It's not a matter of fixing someone's heartbreak or fixing someone's problems. It's a matter of recognizing the humanity in that person and extending yourself enough to share that and make a connection.
Yeah, exactly. And that's hard. I think that can be really hard. I mean, certainly I am a fixer in the sense that everyone always says, well, men are fixers. Women just want to be heard and men want to know what the solution is. Well, we are the opposite in my marriage. I am very much the one that's like, I heard you talk about your problem. Now, how are we going to fix it? And he's like, I just wanted to talk to you about it. So it is sometimes really, really hard or I'm a friend of mine, her mom died unexpectedly. And I was, and she's not someone who really talks about her feelings. And I was like, how do I? do this with someone who doesn't really, and I just periodically sent her a text that said, listen, you don't have to talk to me. I'm just letting you know that I'm thinking about you. And if you do want to talk, I'm here. And if you don't want to talk, I won't text you for, let's call it another week. We'll be thinking of you, right? Like, I mean, we just have to find ways
Yeah.
to connect with each other because it is the whole point of existence, right? I mean, at least for me.
Well, and I think you're exactly right. I mean, if we're going to recognize our our differences from the animal world and whatever else, it is about that. It is about our ability to form those connections, um, not just based on instinct, based on thoughtful choice, thoughtful, empathetic choice. How do we make this world a little bit better? Well, we make everybody else feel that they're not necessarily alone in what they're experiencing, and it's a beautiful thing. And I can't thank you enough for this opportunity to sit and talk about this book. What a lovely conversation to have about the human experience. So please tell everybody where they can learn more about you, and if there's something you can leave us with, one of your gems. I mean, I could find a million of them in here, but if there's one of your gems you could leave us with, please do.
Well, I'll leave you with a gem that's not actually mine. I'll borrow from Nora Ephron, who's one of my favorite writers. And she said she actually wrote a heartbreak book herself called Heartburn. She turned it into a novel.
Mm.
It's a very close, apparently an auto fiction, so quite close to her own experience. And she said everything is copy. And I think about that all the time, meaning the worst thing that's ever happened to you, the best thing that's ever happened to you, the most mundane thing that's ever happened to you, all of it can be useful to you in some way. So what she
Mm.
meant was it's going to be a story. I'm going to get, I'm going to further my career with it. And I think of it that way, but also, you may find that something that felt totally mundane or and you tripped in front of somebody and it was embarrassing and you think about it all the time and you think that's useless. I would erase that from my history if I could. You have no idea how that might come in and click with something else that's happened to you in the future to illuminate some element of your experience and help you understand yourself better or be more empathetic towards someone else or tell a funny story in a moment when someone needs to laugh. So that is, I will leave you with her wisdom, which is everything is copy, and my version of it, which is everything we go through has its use, even in the moments when, that's my version of the silver lining, I suppose. I hate the silver lining thing. If I could go back and not experience this breakup, I totally would. Like,
Absolutely. Yeah, heroin was not our family's friend. Yeah, I'm
right?
right there with you. I don't want to do that
It
again.
doesn't matter
No.
how much good stuff you get out of an extreme pain, most of us would still go back and erase the pain if we could.
Yes,
That doesn't mean you can't
absolutely.
also, two things can be true. You can also appreciate everything that came from that. I mean, I was propelled into therapy and that changed my life in so many ways, right? Um, but yes, that is what so I suppose I left you with two things. Two things can be true is my other favorite phrase.
And that is wisdom that we should all take to heart. Where can we find the book? Where can we learn more about you?
So my website is annhputnam.com. The book you can order the book there. You can get it wherever you get your books. The only thing there is not is an audiobook, which there may be one in the next year or two, depending on how things go with my day job and my
Oh,
child.
please, 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 please put out an audiobook.
I'd
I want to
really
hear
like
you.
to.
I want to hear you read this story in the worst way.
Yeah, I also love audiobooks. I mean, that's the
Yeah.
only way I read anymore with two little kids,
Yeah.
and
Oh gosh.
audiobooks are
Absolutely.
extremely my friend. So I would really like to do that for other people who also have a hard time reading physical books. But other than that, I mean, it's available on Amazon, of course. Bookshop.org is usually where I send people, your local indie, your library. I would really love it if people would request it from their library because I
Mm-hmm.
love libraries and
Yep.
want
Get it
so
in
much
there.
of them. So yeah, so and Navel Gazing, which is my first book, was only published in the UK and Commonwealth, but I have the rights here in the US and I'm putting out a US version sometime this year.
Oh,
So
good. Good.
I
Another one that I can pick up from you. Wonderful, wonderful, wonderful. Yay. And thank you so much for joining me today and for sharing all of your wisdom and your really heartfelt generosity and authenticity and how we can all make better connections with people.
thank you so much, Mary Fran. It was wonderful meeting you, and I really loved talking to you. So thank you.
Thank you. And likewise, likewise. Like I said, I feel like we're best friends already, but I'm glad that we
Oh,
actually
we
had
are.
the opportunity to start that off. Yeah, there we
Yeah.
go. New best friend. It's always a good thing.
Yes.
Thank you for joining us, everybody. If you need a little more inspiration, head on over to brilliantlyresilient.net, where Anne will be part of our Brilliance Bits. You can sign up for that when this episode airs. Please read this book. It is, just read it. Just read the book. Read it. And I will see you all next time on the next episode of the Brilliantly Resilient podcast. Take care, everybody. Thanks for joining me for another episode of the Brilliantly Resilient podcast. Now, before you go, remember this. Resilience isn't about bouncing back to who you were. It's about becoming who you're meant to be. If today's episode helped you reset, rise, or see your brilliance a little more clearly, I invite you to take the next step with me. Explore the Brilliantly Resilient resources, including the podcast, books, and the new Brilliantly Resilient mini course series, all designed to meet you exactly where you are. You can learn more and get started at brilliantlyresilient.net. Until next time, stay steady, stay curious, and keep moving forward, one resilient step at a time.